Mr. Rogers once said, "We live in a world in which we need to share responsibility. It's easy to say, it's not my child, not my community, not my world, not my problem. And then there are those who see the need and respond. I consider those people my heroes." And even though many people consider Fred Rogers to be one of their heroes, there is a truth to foster families really being many of the unsung heroes in our communities. And these are the heroes that we're talking about today, the families who take in some of our community's most vulnerable children and do their best to give them a safe and stable environment. Being foster parents or a foster family is no walk in the park, and it's often a lonely and difficult road. And these families need community support, and that's where Reach Northwest comes in. Reach Northwest works to bring community together to support and equip children and families in the foster care system in Polk and Yamhill counties. They use programs and tools and resources to help these families thrive. And today, Shirley Turner, Executive Director of Reach Northwest, is going to be sharing what foster care is, uncovering some misconceptions about foster care, sharing how Reach Northwest got started, what the relationship is between Reach Northwest and Every Child Oregon, and some of the dynamics of foster care that maybe you hadn't thought of before. Hi, I'm Daniel Roberts, host of the Giving Town podcast, where we share stories of hope and generosity in Newburgh and the surrounding areas. We live in an amazing community full of incredible people who are all working to make Newburgh an even better place to live. This podcast is all about sharing those stories, helping people in our town be inspired, get involved, and have hope for our future. This podcast is brought to you by my real estate team, the Joyful Roberts Group. It's part of our mission to not just serve this community by doing an amazing job in real estate, but to also help Newburgh be an even better place to live. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home anywhere around Newburgh, reach out to us and we'll be happy to serve you. Well, thanks for tuning in to this episode, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with Shirley Turner. Shirley, thank you so much for joining me today on the Giving Town podcast. I'm looking forward to having a conversation about Reach Northwest and foster care in general. Foster care is kind of one of those interesting topics that a lot of people maybe think they know what it's like or they know what to expect. And I think on the other hand, there's a lot of people who have no idea what it's about. And there's a lot of misconceptions, whether realized or unrealized. So I'd kind of like to start just with the understanding too that this conversation is aimed at people who have an interest in supporting the most vulnerable children in our community in one way or another. Maybe they can't be foster parents themselves. Maybe they want to help, but don't feel like they can. Or maybe they are discounting themselves, without real justification, and maybe they would be good fit. So that's kind of the theme of what I want to go over today. But there's a really good book that you gave me called No Sugarcoating, which is basically a woman sharing of her experience and kind of the coffee talk of if you're interested in foster care, things you should be aware of, things that you should know and pay attention to. And I'll say just up front, there's few things that make me simultaneously angry and sad to the same degree as people hurting other children. Mm-hmm. And I'm probably going to cry throughout this podcast at different points, but and I think I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and when I think of someone hurting them, it's so hard to imagine. And these sweet innocent children that don't deserve these things happening to them, that have to experience severe abuse and severe trauma. It's really the unsung heroes of other people in the community who will step up and take care of them when their own parents can't. So with that said, when you're talking to people about foster care, you probably answer a lot of the same questions over and over again, right? So what are some of those questions that people commonly come to you asking?
Yeah, so the first one is, well, first off, thank you for having me today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And second, the first obvious question is, so what is foster care? If they don't have their own preconceived assumptions of something that's just totally wrong, which happens all the time. But the definition of foster care is simply, it's the temporary care and housing of a child that for some reason it's been decided by a judge that they cannot live with their biological parents. And so foster care is a a number of people. It can be a relative provider. It can be a grandma who suddenly has her 3 and 5-year-old kid living with them. It can be a neighbor or a friend, or it can be a general service provider. All of these have been approved and vetted by the state that have certified homes. I'm doing air quotes now. Certified homes that can bring in these little human beings with a ton of emotional baggage. And I really want to, several times, I'm going to give shout outs to the general foster placement families, because they're the ones that are bringing in complete strangers with all that emotional baggage at the risk of disrupting their own families and their children's, and they're willing to do that because they understand that kids need that love and support for them to thrive.
How often would you say it's and what was the term again? A general service provider?
General is a general placement.
General placement.
Yeah.
So basically, this is someone who signs up to be to be a part of foster care.
Yes.
So how often would you say it's someone goes to them, or like, I'm thinking if something happens and they find, hey, here's a relative, here's an aunt, but that person has not gone through the process. So are they not able to go there, or like, how does that typically work?
To be certified by the state and therefore get paid from the state, and it's not an income, it's just really, it's a reimbursement, a very really small reimbursement in the grand scheme of things. They have to go through about 27 hours of training. They have to have a home assessment done. And there's going to be a lot of intrusive questions, and a lot of people ask a lot of things because the state is ultimately at that point responsible for the care of that child. And so they want to make sure that they are putting that child in a safest possible place. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're married or if you're single. It doesn't matter if you have kids or you don't have kids. That has no bearing in whether you're an appropriate foster parent or not. It's whether can you provide that safety and support for that child. Yeah.
And what about when someone hasn't gone through that certification, but say they are a family member?
Yep.
Is that the first?
Got to go through the process.
Okay. Before they take care of the child?
Yes. They have to have some kind of, there's emergency placements, but they have to go through some semblance of training, and maybe it's done in parallel, but they have to go through that process.
Okay. So with an emergency placement, say something happens and like, hey, this child needs to be somewhere right now that's not at their house.
And they can't find a family member, right, then they will go. And if they go to general placement.
Okay. And if they do find a family member, they'll go there first, even if that family member has not had training. Is that what you're saying?
No, they have to be certified.
Okay. So if there's not a certified family member, so they'll go somewhere else that's certified before a family member that's uncertified.
Or in the case of emergency, eligible to be certified, right? If they need someone a home, they need a bed that night, they will do what they can. And it's a family member, they will do what they can.
Gotcha.
Because that kid has already been through some form of trauma or neglect that got them in that situation in the first place, right? They've already been traumatized once. When you pull a kid out of their home with their bio parents that is not safe anymore, but you pull them out of that, that's their second that's the second time they're traumatized at a minimum, because they know how to navigate that. When I'm working with foster kids, I never say we're here to show what normal is. They live in their normal every day. It may not be a great normal or a good normal, but it's their normal, and they know they have the defenses. They have the coping mechanisms. They know what not to say to dad to get him mad, so he won't hit mom. They know how to deal with that space. You pull them out and you pull them into some stranger's home, they don't know if they'll ever see their parents again. Yeah. And I've got countless stories of seeing that. So the state works very hard to get them as normalized a situation for the very abnormal situation it is as possible. It starts with keeping them in their community so they can stay at their schools and stay with their friends. And then it goes to, okay, where's the nearest family member? And ultimately it may end up in foster care. I do want to point out one thing, and that is, in this state of Oregon, this is what's termed a reunification state. This is not a foster to adopt state. And reunification simply means that they're doing everything they can to get that child placed with a family member. And sometimes, if it's not their parents, It could be grandma. It could be an aunt. It could be a next door neighbor that's really close to. I've seen that happen. But it could also be a home where their siblings have been placed. Mm-hmm. I know of that instance where a child was placed where their full biological siblings have been adopted out of the system, and they were also placed in that home because at least there was that family connection. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen all the time, but the state goes to extremes to try to find those family connections. I had a friend who had, second, third cousin removed. They were calling to see if they would take a child that they had never met before or even knew existed because there was a family connection. I won't get into the pros and cons of all that, but that is how the state is, that is their focus, that reunification is for the best interest of the child. When people come into looking for adoption as a path to adoption, we just have to make sure they understand it may happen, but it may not. Only about 5% of the kids in state's care are even eligible for adoption. To be eligible, the parents have had to relinquish their parental rights. So out of the 7,700 kids in the state of Oregon, I can't do the math fast enough.
You said
35 kids are eligible for adoption.
Wow.
Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, because
no, it went the wrong way.
77.
About 350 kids are, yeah. So, yeah, see, now we're doing math.
Yeah, 5%. You're right.
So at any rate, it's just really important to know that is what child welfare is desperately trying to get to, is to get it reunified with their family. Obviously, the number one place is with their biological parents.
Yeah. Now, this one of the challenges, and we even talked about the possibility of taking in a child who needs that kind of help. And one of the really challenging things is you get a child, you know they've experienced trauma, and you kind of find a new sense of normal in your own life. You grow some level of attachment to that child, and now they're being taken away, sometimes put back into a situation that you also know is not great. And that seems really hard. How do people talk to people about that and deal with that? It
is really hard. And we just need to have more conversation with resource families in general to make sure, number one, they know that they are supported, that they are seen, and that they do suffer grief. Every time a foster parent is having to give back a child, they go through the 5 stages of grief. It happens every single time.
Yeah.
So they just need to understand that it's more important that everyone's working in the child's best interest, and sometimes the child's best interest is to go elsewhere to a family member, perhaps where their family member is also placed. And that you are doing the best you can in that moment for that child. You really don't get into foster care to fix a kid. You get in the business of foster care to be able to provide that safe and secure place to help them navigate through this very untenable situation that they're in, that they did not choose to be.
Yeah.
We're just trying to help them, again, not to show them what normal is, but to show them what healthy looks like, what healthy response is. And to just provide them tools so that they can go through. And you've got to be prepared to have your heart broken. It's going to happen. People coming in saying, I'm just going to foster this kid, and they've got in their brain this kind of adoption, and of course, and the kid goes, and now they've got another foster kid and another foster kid, because now their heart has been, what's Kelly Clarkson's song, Beautiful Disaster? They realize that all these children are in need of care. And they keep coming back. But if we're not careful, and they're not feeling supported, and they're not feeling seen, they're going to close their home.
Yeah.
They need to know that as they're going through this, that someone understands them, that someone's giving the tools they need and the support they need and the tangible needs they're looking for, so they can continue to create that environment. It's one of the, and I'll get into it later, but one of the greatest needs right now is finding respite providers for families so that they can get a break, to take that breath, to take that pause, take some time away so that they can continue to say yes.
Yeah. And that leads into, and I'm sure we'll touch on that part more. you mentioned the resource families and the support, and that kind of goes into the connection between Reach Northwest and a foster care system. So can you share a little bit about that relationship? Because people aren't actually coming to Reach Northwest for, like, you're not the one who has the list of here's who needs help. So how's your organization connected to foster care?
Well, it's a circuitous story. It's started with a long time ago, about 20 years ago, I started as director for Royal Family Kids Camp, which was a camp specifically for children that had been abused, abandoned, neglected, ages 7 to 11 in the foster care system. I heard the story of how moments matter, that 1 week at camp can make a difference. And, a simple touch, an encouraging word, saying their name sweetly, not being yelled at, can just change the trajectory of the life of a child forever. And I heard this message, and it was like lightning was coursing through my body, because that was my own personal story. Because I was one of these kids, not the foster part, unfortunately. But that's what happened to me in my very dysfunctional family. There was one person who showed me that unconditional love, to show me that I had worth, that I had value. And that because of that one person I saw every so often in my life, that little trajectory in my life changed to make this huge difference. And I've had a fantastic life. I've had a great career, a long marriage, great kids, great grandkids. And it's all because that one person that saw that I had value and worth. And she understood, with all my trauma-induced behaviors that I was expressing, that I didn't mean it. I actually heard her say those words. She doesn't mean to. And to know that I was seen and heard in that moment, that completely changed my life. I was 8 years old. I can remember exactly where I was, remember why she said it. So when I heard the story of Royal Family, it's like, we got to do this camp. The next thing I know, I'm going to director's training. And so I got on the work because of the kids, because I wanted every kid that has gone through what I had gone through to be able to know and feel and see that there is hope. I think that's the biggest reason why you're seeing so many teenage and now kid suicides, is because they don't see hope. So I wanted to be able to provide that with the camps. Well, working with the camps, now I'm starting to interact with all the foster families. And I learned really quick, foster families are not in it for the money. There's no way. There's a couple maybe, but I've dealt with hundreds of foster families in 20 years. They are not in it for the money. They're doing it because they want to help these kids have a better life. I met the bio parents every so often, when they were reunified, but we kept inviting the kids back, because just because their case closed doesn't mean their trauma-induced behaviors just magically went poof. So I met them, and I got to learn that they weren't just, people that just couldn't figure out life. These are people that were dedicated to their children. Every mother wants their child, and every child wants their mommy. That's just a fact of life. And I saw these families, and they would come, sometimes I'd see them year after year, and one time they'd come in, just had a job, life is great, and then the next year they show up, and they're clearly been on drugs, and, their life was a roller coaster, but they were trying so hard to do everything for those kids. I think the most meaningful thing that happened was when a mother wrote to me from Coffee Creek Correctional Institute to make sure. She said, I've screwed up. I'm serving for 3 years now, but I want you to know where my daughter is, because I want to make sure she gets to come to camp again. She, from prison, she is reaching out to make sure that her daughter is going to be okay. So I learned that bio parents are really just doing the best they can. And then I met the caseworkers, which, there's a lot of opinions people have about child welfare and caseworkers. And I'm not here to give past judgment on the system at all. It's a governmental agency. You do the math if it's working or not. But the people inside, they have tremendous hearts and tremendous passion for those kids. And I've seen them take money out of their own wallets. I've seen them have kids show up at their door, or heard about kids showing up at their door at 10 o'clock at night because they've run away and they have no place to go and all this stuff. These people have hearts. So foster parents aren't in it for the money. The kids are not screwed up for life. the bio parents are doing everything they can to get their kids back and keep their kids. And child welfare social workers really are doing all they can, but they're constrained by all the procedures and protocols put on them by the state.
Yeah. In many ways, it kind of epitomizes even this podcast, the stories of hope and generosity. I mean, there's hope. I mean, the reasons that you gave, there's hope, and generosity is the time and effort. And like you said, even taking money out of their own wallets to make a difference. One of the interesting things, go ahead.
So I didn't answer the question.
Oh, right.
Sorry. The question being, how is Reach Northwest tied in with foster care? So, at any rate, and I'll try to be quicker here. I did that for a number of years, and then I saw through all that, a week of camp is really awesome for the kids, but the best way to help those kids was to take the time to invest in those that support them. So invest in the families, support the caseworkers. If you think teachers got it hard, try being a caseworker for a day. So that's when I had a very nice career in high tech. I was doing all this part-time, this other stuff part-time. And I finally just kind of went all in and retired. I'm beginning air quotes because I hate the word retire. But I left high tech and I just went all in full-time with Reach Northwest so that we could provide those programs and services to help the families. Unfortunately, we're not doing the camps right now. We had to put it on pause and kind of regrouping on that, but we're still doing a number of programs and things. But it's more focused on helping, shoring up the families and giving them what they need.
How are the main ways that it's changed over the years?
What's changed?
Or like Reach, so it started, was it 2011? I'm trying to remember when it actually...
Well, the camp started, the Reach Northwest actually started as a community engagement model, or not even community engagement model, to community at large, the at-risk community at large. So that was the problem, and I know better. I was a marketing executive, and I came in saying, I'm going to help. I left Intel saying, I'm going to help the at-risk community. I'm going to start this nonprofit. Well, that was too broad, too wide. I had nothing specific. And so, unfortunately, it was also 2008, and the market kind of crashed, and nonprofits were very non-profitable anyway. So I went back to the high-tech sector and found a job in a boss that would support my now nonprofit habit, and had that for about 8 years. And then that was when I had the realization, if not now, when? It's go time. We need to go and do this full time. We were originally Chehalem Valley Reach, and then what happened was Every Child Oregon came knocking on our door saying, hey, can you be the backbone organization for Every Child for Polk and Yamhill counties? And at the first time they said that, I went, no way. I'm a VP of sales and marketing here. I can't do this. And then 6 months later, life changed. And I went back to Every Child and said, what's happened? And they said, yeah, we still haven't found anybody for Yamhill County. And I went, isn't that interesting? And that's when we brought in Every Child, which is a statewide movement in support of children, families, and foster care. And because I took on Polk County, I had to change the name. I felt I had to change the name. Yeah. So that's when I changed it to Reach Northwest in 2019.
Okay, so Every Child Oregon was already... I want to make sure I have that distinction. So Every Child Oregon was a statewide program that they worked with different affiliates, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you kind of independently were starting Reach.
Right.
Chehalem at the time is that right? And then they said, well, hey, we don't have anyone for, Polk and Yamhill, so can you just be a part of our organization? So is that how that works?
Yeah, we are the official nonprofit for Every Child Polk Yamhill.
Okay.
Right. Every Child Polk Yamhill is a program of Reach Northwest.
Okay. And so is Reach Northwest, so is every county, does it have its own, like Every Child?
Yes.
In that there's
some of them,
nonprofit names.
Some county, like there's Every Child Central Oregon. There is Riverside Outreach in the Northwest counties. That's where the Every Child affiliate for Northwest counties are.
Gotcha.
So it all depends. We're all a mishmash of models.
But
But ultimately, someone has to be financially responsible and have the insurance and everything to
Right.
support a nonprofit.
Okay.
Work.
But for all intents and purposes, Reach Northwest and Every Child Oregon, as far as Yamhill County is concerned, are one and the same. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. Reach does a few more things, a few more programs than Every Child has.
Okay.
And that's, at this point, it's the only difference. Because we had the camp, there was 2 different programs at that time, and now the camp's kind of on pause at the moment. So,
okay. Yeah. So if someone's thinking of doing foster care, I think we actually even were looking into it, and it was Every Child Oregon that we kind of looked into, which was connection. So anyway, it was funny finding that connection, like, oh, wait a second, like this is...
Yeah, and Jelana that wrote No Sugarcoating, she basically is the founder of Every Child Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, the book is No Sugarcoating by Jelana. Is that Gobble? Gobble.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
Gobble. Yes. There's only one B.
Just in time for Thanksgiving.
I'm sure she'll appreciate that. Sorry, Jelana, if you ever listen to this. That brought up another interesting point when you were talking just with the caseworkers. So I had heard stories of people who got into foster care, but they were blamed for things that the caseworkers maybe didn't like them or whatever, and they got accused of things, and there's a liability and lawsuits and that kind of thing. How have you heard of that? Or are you familiar with those kind of things? Or
Yeah.
Because for someone who says like, I would love to, but I don't want to get accused of, if the child does something, or, then the child's accusing me of things because they have their own trauma and they're, not telling the truth, or,
Well, would you not be a teacher? Because the same thing happens, right? Those kind of accusations happen. I try not to get in the middle of those situations because that's really between, I call it ODHS, Oregon Department of Human Services, and the families. It happens on occasion. For the most part, in media, we tend to focus on the sensational. It's just like everyone thinks that all these kids in foster care have gone through some sort of physical or sexual abuse, when the reality is it's only about 8 to 10%. The rest is really neglect or threat of harm. I mean, something's could harm them by staying in the house. We will. What we are at best is a listening ear for those foster families, but we don't help them with any legal advice or anything like that.
Okay. So as far as like someone who's concerned about that, do you think there's any merit to that concern? If you're saying, I wouldn't want to.
It could happen. I'm flying next month, the plane could crash. I mean, you just kind of got to, you got to weigh I'm going to say the pros and the cons, but the benefit to the child is what we're doing this for.
Yeah.
Everything's about the child. Are you going to say no because you're afraid of something that might happen? I would just caution anybody to go in with courage and boldness and just do it. Yeah. There's going to be problems, and it's never going to be a straight linear path in foster care. You just have to be ready for the unexpected and prepared, and just do the best you can. And, in any legal matter, document.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if there's really one, but that's not the norm.
Okay. Speaking of being unprepared and expect the unexpected, how does Reach Northwest help families who are taking that leap and bringing in children?
So there's 3 basic things that foster parents need. And first and foremost, they need training. They need to understand how to deal with children with these trauma-induced behaviors, I call it. And you hear a lot about trauma-informed training. We take it one step further in calling it trauma-responsive training. So I'm actually a practitioner of trust-based relational intervention training, which doesn't just tell you the why and the what of trauma behaviors. It tells you how to work through it and process through it and get your child through whatever meltdown or whatever situation's going on. All foster families have to go through 30 hours I think it's every 2 years, could be every 1 year. They have to go through a lot of continuing education to get recertified. So we've been providing that training, that TBRI training for them. We're going to work on giving more opportunities for training and helping them just get that's one of the tools that we can give foster parents. Another thing that foster parents need, and I mentioned this before, is rest. They need rest. So we have, thanks to our partnership with George Fox University, we're able to put on Foster Parents Night Out, which is a monthly program during the school year of 4 hours of come drop your kid off and just go take a bubble bath or go shopping or go see a movie. We'll take care of your kids for hours, and we've got trained staff specifically for these trauma-induced behaviors. We'll take care of your kids, and that includes if they have bio kids, by the way, they can bring them too. And we'll take care of your kids so you can get a break. I mentioned the respite providers are needed. There is a certified respite provider program now that's put on by ODHS. We'd love to get more people connected into that. It goes through a mini assessment, not nearly as deep and painful as becoming a foster parent, but there is some parameters there, and people can actually get paid now for being a respite provider, which is nice. And then the last thing that they really need is connection. They completely lost connection with each other during COVID. Before COVID hit, I saw all these opportunities and all these foster families just getting together for coffee and talking. They're empathetic because they all share the same pain. They all share the same frustrations. And when I was doing camp, I would notice kids talking about the homes they're in. It's like, oh yeah, I was in that home last week, or yeah, I was in that home the week before. So it's all kind of interconnected. They lost all of that. And so we're trying to provide those opportunities for connection again. One of the things we're hoping to do with Foster Parents Night Out this year is to add what I'm calling Parent Zone. So while their kids are being taken care of for 4 hours, they can come and have a meal, play some board games, maybe get a little training, and I'm really doing air quotes now, something that qualifies for training, but just be able to talk and connect with one another. I'd love to be able to start foster parent support groups up. There has not been any formal foster parent support group in a very, very long time. There's been no foster parent association in Yamhill County for a good 8 years. Oh, wow. So being able to we're working on ways to help get that going again. And then we also we do have a peer mentoring program. So that's where an experienced foster parent is matched with a newer struggling foster parent. So that, again, they can help them through just that listening ear, dedicated one-on-one time for a period of time. And we actually doing pre and post surveys, and the post surveys are stunning. I mean, what did you know about the court system? Pre was like at a 1, and post the mentoring was like an 8 out of 10. So those have been proven to be really valuable as well. So things like that. And then also we're helping to provide the gaps. What happened with COVID was we started helping with tangible needs. And, when COVID first hit and the shutdowns happened, 2 things they couldn't get, groceries or toilet paper. So we kind of went into action 2 weeks after the shutdown started and have been helping with those emergency and tangible needs ever since. It's really important to make that distinction, because if suddenly, and I've had it happen where a friend called and said, hey, I got a 3 and a 5-year-old on my doorstep at 2 a.m. last night with nothing but the clothes on their back. What do? I was prepared for a teenager. So we went through the list. What do you need? Do you have 2 beds? No. Do you have car seats? No. Do you have food a toddler, a 3 and a 5-year-old would eat? No. And so we just went through that. It was a laundry list of stuff. We put it out to the community through our My Neighbor program. Within 24 hours, every one of those needs were met by a community partner. And within 72 hours, we had everything delivered to their home. Wow. And the reason why people wonder why we do that is, when I say emergency, yes, there is a reimbursement payment that is made. You don't get that until 30 days later. And these people needed help now. Yeah. So I'm not going to sit there and wait. We're going to do it.
How many foster, what is the right term? Is it foster families?
It's actually resource families now, but nobody knows the term. The state wants to use resource families because that includes, first off, it includes the relative providers, but also we need to view ourselves as a resource for these children. But anyway, resource either way. Let's use foster.
Foster families. Okay. How many foster families are there in Yamhill County?
In Yamhill County, there's approximately 120.
Okay.
No, I have that wrong. There are 70.
70. Oh,
yes,
okay.
I did
so
backwards.
120 are
I'll tell you why. It's 70 homes, and there's 120 to 125 kids in care at any given time.
Okay. So roughly, almost 1-2 ratio of homes to children, which I guess makes sense because if a home situation is deemed, what's the word? Unsuitable, there's, every child in the home needs to, it's not like, oh, the 3-year-old can stay, but the 5-year-old has to go. Right. Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes siblings, I would say at least half the time siblings do get split for that very reason. It's not that they don't want them. They don't have the capacity for them. Or maybe one's a 2-year-old and one's a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old. Let's make them a teenager. Teenagers are the hardest kids to place in those situations. So they get split, unfortunately.
In a situation where there are young children, because that's another consideration, is like if you've got young kids, and you're bringing in a teenager or even maybe a preteen or close to that age, that can really disrupt things even more, because now you've got, this older child who may not even be safe, recognizing that, sure, it's because of the trauma, yet still they may act out in ways that are unsafe to your own.
Yeah, they do go through an assessment to understand what potential issues are. If they are, I will say, higher needs, there's higher level of care beyond foster homes, group homes, and things like that. Again, you have to be conscious of it, but the ODHS is doing everything they can to make as good a match as possible. Now, in an emergency situation, they're just trying to find a bed and a roof. That's when you really have to watch and see if this is really going to be a good fit. One of the stats that's followed is called foster placement stability rate, and that's measuring how many times a kid is moved, how many placements the kids are moved to. And so our county was in the lowest quartile on that foster stability rate. We were running around, it was 55% that kids have been moved 2 times or less, which sounds okay, except that means that 45% of the kids were moved 3 or more times. And the older they get, the more placements they are, because the older they get, the harder it is for them to ever have a chance to get adopted or reunified or have guardianship. So it's just really important to be able to keep the homes open and keep as stable environment as possible and not be moving the kids as much. But in an emergency situation, it could happen pretty easily. You've got there's a teenage boy that comes in, it's just not fitting with your 2-year-old daughter, or seems to be a threat. You've got to be honest and open with DHS about that, and they will do what they can to resolve that situation as quickly as possible. But as Joanna points out in her book, she had the case of someone who only wanted, a lot of people want to bring in kids that are younger than their own because they want their kids to influence the child in foster care, not the other way around. But one time, out of need, DHS calls and says, hey, can you please take a 12-year-old girl? And so she did reluctantly, and she said it was the best thing I ever did. And it's because it just worked out for a variety of factors. So, yeah, it's a concern. But again, let's not put up a bunch of barriers before we even try.
Yeah.
But you have to be conscious of it. You got to go in eyes wide open and be ready for that pivot and that shift and whatever changes need to be made.
What would you say to someone who's considering being a foster parent or becoming a foster family, or maybe they've kind of loosely thought about it, but there's never been anything to make them take that jump or that leap?
Well, I would say if they're truly interested, the best thing to do, I think, is become a respite provider and take in a kid for a weekend and just see what that's like. If they want to go further, I would say start taking the steps, have the conversation with ODHS, and that, because there's a lot of, you got to learn a lot about you before you go into this, and start doing that self-evaluation. And are we mentally equipped for this? Let alone do we have the space, and can we afford extra meals? Oh, by the way, OHP doesn't cover orthodontia. So while all those kids have an OHP free insurance plan, you got to pay for braces. So be ready for all those extra charges, the extra gas you're going to have to pay getting them to counseling and court dates and all that good stuff. But at any rate, I would just do the full, to me, because I'm a planner by nature, I would want to map out what's this going to mean and be able to assess that from a factual standpoint, and then go into the emotional standpoint. What is it about me that could possibly be triggered? How am I preparing myself for with a kid that's going to be just screaming at me, I hate you. If I don't, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to need to go get training for that. If a lot of times when a kid's saying, I hate you, it's because they don't know how to healthily say what they really mean. Yeah. Because that's what they're used to.
There was interesting is in the book, I'm probably going to miss out where it is, but basically the things that, well, I guess I'll start with, you mentioned when you were talking at a chamber event about recognizing kids' brains. It's not just, bring them in and I'll, be kind to them, give them a healthy environment and everything will be good. Their brain is essentially miswired in some ways. That's what trauma could do. Can you? Yeah,
it kind of broken wiring. So all of our brains from 0 to 12, all the little synapses in our brains are starting to connect. But if a child has gone through any kind of trauma during that time, it's like someone came up and knocked them on the side of their head, and they literally knocked them on their side of the head, but emotionally knocked them on the side of their head, just jostled them to where now those wires, those synapses aren't quite connecting. And so basically what happens when your car has a loose wire, your refrigerator has a loose wire, whatever, it goes on the fritz. Mm-hmm. That's what's wrong. These kids' brains are on the fritz. And they, with patience and encouragement and you being trained on how to help them figure out what a healthy response is and a healthy resolution is, your brain can be repaired. But if you have to understand with the kids, if they start acting out or having a meltdown or whatever, is it truly willful disobedience, or are they suddenly in survival mode? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times with the kids, they are in survival mode. The one thing I learned when a kid's in meltdown, there is no negotiation at that point. You just got to help them get re-regulated and just calmly sit there with them. My record for meltdown at camp was 4 hours. And we just sat with that kid and sat with that kid and sat with that kid. I don't think the adults there didn't say more than 10 words. Well, he was just processing. And the fact that we took that time and sat there with him, he remembers that. I know he remembers that to this day. That was our way of being present for him.
Yeah. And I think there's two sides of one. Either the need is not great enough for me to do something, or that someone else will do it, and so therefore I don't have to. Or the need is too great that I can't handle it. I'm just going to bury my head in the sand. And, this is all happening in our, we can't be responsible for everyone's trauma in the whole world, obviously. Right. There's, horrible things happening all across the world. And if we feel the same way deeply as we do for our own family members, for every single person in the world, no one can handle that.
Right.
Yet at the same time, you can't turn a blind eye to everything and be willing to, you have to be willing to step up and do something. And that's kind of what I'm personally wrestling with a lot of these things. And I'm kind of the mind, can I actually tangibly handle this, or will I completely cease to function? It's some of the questions they have in here that kids, the kids ask, one, do people here get locked in closets? Will the nightlight protect me from the bad man? Did I lose my food? Like, did what I do make me do it so I don't get food anymore? Yep. Are you going to hit me? Like, these kind of questions that kids ask that are like, that's what they're dealing with on a daily basis.
Yeah, we got asked, why are you so nice to us? Why are you so nice to me? At camp, that happened more than once. They just couldn't understand this one kid was used to being tossed around like a football by his big brothers, and he just could not understand. He was truly confused why we're being so nice to him. So, their trauma, that's their reality. That's their norm. And again, they've learned how to cope with it. And so when they don't see it, why are you so nice to me? I'm used to this. Yeah. I know what to do in this. I have no idea what to do in the land of nice. Yeah.
It sounds like what you're saying is even though there is the heartbreak of bringing a child in, having them and them going,
yep.
that a child who experiences love can be changed forever.
Yeah, but it's their version of love. And so it starts with building that trust more than anything.
Yeah.
They need to feel they can trust. They need felt safety. They need to, at the end of the day, they need to know, for them to calm down, they need to know they're going to have a meal. They know they're going to have clothes. They know they have someone that's going to understand their weird behaviors, and and that someone is going to unconditionally love them through those behaviors and not walk away and not send them away. It really, though love obviously is the end game, it starts with building their trust back.
Yeah.
People that they trust in their life have failed them.
Yeah.
Really key people. And they need to get that trust built back up for them to have that hope to function.
It was one of the things that I hadn't really considered before going through all of this. And again, like I said, this is kind of a personal journey as well, is there's an opportunity to break the cycle of trauma and abuse in a child. And if you can be part of that so that they go through life recognizing maybe I can choose a different path than my parents did. And maybe I am worth something.
Yep.
And they make the choice to go on and not that they're going to be perfect because they have to still work through their own trauma, but take that one step further. You mentioned that mom that was riding from prison, and, maybe the next step in the next generation is maybe being able to stay out of prison. And then maybe the step a generation down from that is actually having a thriving, family and life, because each parent was doing the best that they could with what they had. And is a foster parent, can a foster parent be part of that, of being able to speak life and hope and truth, build up that trust so that a child says, maybe it is worth, taking a better path and going, I don't have to go down the same cycles my parents did. Maybe I am worth something like this family told me I am.
Well, just giving them the confidence that they can go another path. From personal experience, I can tell you I don't think I can do better than my parents. I just know I broke the cycle of what I call crazy. And I recognize that now many, many years after the fact. I probably was 50 before I realized that. But something in me from that moment, and for these kids, these moments that says, I can do something. I had this one kid at camp, man, we got into it hard. He was 13-year-old. I was 14 years old. And he was the worst. The mom and me, the tiger mom and me came out, and I was chasing him down, and it's like, you know better than this. I know you know better than this, whatever. And we had it out. Long story short, we hugged it out before the end of that camp. I apologized for my behavior, which he was shocked by. But something stuck, and I'm happy to report I think he's in the military now, but he's in the military so he can have college paid for. He's got a path. He's got a direction. Did my freaking out that day change his life? I don't know, but I'd like to think it did a little bit. I just got to find a better way. I can't do that with all those kids. Oh my gosh, it was so embarrassing after the fact. But we have several kids that they felt that moment where I can be better, and they've just done better. They like one kid came to us and said, "I need to get my act together and start getting A's in school." Good plan, and he did. Right? He had to come to that realization himself. We can talk to kids, especially teenagers, man. You can talk to your blue in the face. Will they ever listen? Who knows? But you got to try. But you also have to be where they are at. You can't just lecture kids all the time. Or freak out on them like I did.
So what are some of the main needs right now?
We're coming, believe it or not, it's almost July, which I cannot believe. For Reach Northwest and Every Child, we're going to get more and more requests. There's going to be more and more placements that happen. We also get a lot more requests for things to do in the summertime. But more than anything, we have to be ready for those emergency placements. So if there's a gift card or donation that can be made to Reach Northwest, that would be very helpful. So we have them on hand. The two biggest things we'd ask for are beds and car seats. And I really hate giving used mattresses to kids. So, and that's the other thing. I hate giving used anything. We have a number of holiday drives coming up. There's shoes, there's PJs, there's winter coats, particularly winter coat drive. I have other partners that help with those others, but winter coat drive we do ourselves. And I learned the hard way, no used coats. We got some really rank ones one year. So we just collect the money to be able to just go purchase. We did around 150 coats, winter coats last year. So that's coming up. Just keep an eye out for that. We also have our concert for the kids coming up October 12th, the Chehalis Cultural Center. That's just going to be a great time with my buddy Nate Bodsford, and just a casual event. It's very kid-friendly. It's in the afternoon. It's Be a Superhero, so you will get a cape when you walk in, kids and adults alike, and just enjoy the concert. We'll have some opportunities to give and get connected there. But if you're at all interested, two things. If you're interested in no sugarcoating, I'd be happy to provide you a copy of that, either digitally or paperback. If you want to connect through us through connect at reachnw.org, and I'm sure you'll have this in print on the podcast. I'd be happy to get you that book, because I think it's a very eye-opening and very, I don't want to say in your face, but she doesn't pull back. It's the good, the bad, the ugly of foster parenting. And it's just 83 pages. I think that's a stunning little book.
It is.
We'd happy to get that to anybody who's interested. And like I said, if you just want to give it a shot, try being a certified respite provider. And connect with us, and we will get you the information to get that training and get connected with DHS.
What does that process look like?
It's about an hour of online training, and there, like I said, there's a mini home assessment that goes with it, and that's it.
So someone reaches out to you, you connect them to DHS, they go through the training.
Yep.
That seems overly simplistic.
And they get checked, got to go through the background check and all that. So they'll get vetted in some way.
What about then if you take the next step to become an actual resource for foster parent?
Same thing. We'll get you connected in with ODH. I can remember it's ODHS, Oregon Department of Human Services, because DHS is Department of Homeland Security. ODHS will get you connected with child welfare, and they will get you on that path. All the 27 hours, whatever it is all online now. But this at-home assessment's going to take time. It'll take a few months to get certified.
What are the kind of requirements on a home? And maybe that's kind of getting too into the weeds, but like if someone has a 3-bedroom, does every child need to have their own room, or how does that part work?
I'm not quite sure. They have requirements like if you really shouldn't take in a kid if you already have 5, that kind of max. They want to make sure that the kid I don't think the child has to have their own bedroom space, but surely not 4 bunks in one room.
Yeah.
So I'm not exactly sure what that detailed process is.
Well, it is helpful. It's interesting to know. And I guess, it can't hurt to go through that process of learning one way or another and taking that step.
Read the book.
Read the book. Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Shirley. It's been great talking to you. I know we could talk for hours. I think there is, honestly, the book, in my mind, it kind of just strips away a lot of the excuses. I think part of it is you have to be aware there's a need. And I think everyone does, but we don't see it. It sounds like a very lonely thing, honestly. There's not much of a community, and you have to find, you have to really be resilient, and it does take finding a community, which I know is not easy.
And building your own community.
Yeah.
Get your own family prepared, parents and whoever you might be needing for those respite times. So.
And the last question I'll leave you with, you already answered partially, but what gives you hope for the future?
I always like to say these kids are our future. They just don't know it yet. And for us as a community, it behooves us to do something for all the children in our community, regardless of their situation, because they're going to be calling the shots in another 20 years. We kid about Gen Zers. The oldest Gen Zer can now be a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. We've got to make sure that we are preparing these kids to help them become productive members of society. And whatever we can do beyond that, just whatever we can do to help kids. Mental health is such an issue for everybody right now, but these have it tenfold versus the normal kids with the trauma they've been through. And we need to do our part to just come alongside and, again, let them know they are seen and they are heard and they are understood, and that we're there for them, and we're going to be able, they are going to make it, and therefore there is hope for the future. They have to, I believe, I can't speak for every kid I've ever seen through camp or seen through every child, but I know in my heart that if I can just help them change, give them that point of encouragement, that changing that trajectory in their life just a little tiny bit in that moment is going to have huge impact over time. And that's what drives me to do this work. I just want to make sure that every child is in a safe and secure family, and every family gets the strong and caring community that they need. So that's the heartbeat of what we do.
And there's a quote that I'll end with that was on your website that I think epitomizes this as well, from none other than Mr. Rogers. He said, "We live in a world in which we need to share responsibility. It's easy to say it's not my child, not my community, not my world, not my problem. And then there are those who see the need and respond. And I consider those people my heroes." So thank you for being one of those heroes. Mm-hmm. And thank you to anyone who listening to this is one of those heroes who stepped up and done this. And I have a feeling I may need to be one of those eventually myself.
Just do it.
Well, thank you, Shirley. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to the Giving Town podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend who you think might benefit from hearing it. While more and more people are continuing to hear about this podcast, I still need your help to spread the message about all the people and organizations that make Newburgh so great. Well, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next episode.